Hello and welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to business confidence. Well, this is an end of year episode, and what a year it's been. 2025 has given us so many inspiring conversations with entrepreneurs who opened up to us about their journeys, the highs, the lows, the setbacks, the lessons learnt, and the practical wisdom that they picked up along the way. Every guest has brought something different and deeply human, I would say, and something we can all take forward into 2026. And as we look ahead to next year, this episode for me is a moment to pause and reflect and hopefully share with you, the listeners. I'm sharing some of my favourite guest moments from the year. I mean, the biggest discussion we had internally was which ones to leave out, and unfortunately we can't include everything. But we begin this episode with a moment from Zareen Ruhi Ahmed, who reminds us to stay true to what you love, follow your heart, and embrace the mistakes that shape you.
I would probably be saying, don't grow up too fast. Stay with what you love and follow your heart. And I feel I have followed my heart, but I made so many mistakes. I really, but I'm not sorry for those mistakes because they were part of, what molded me into who I'm becoming, and I'm still not there. I'm still growing. I'm still, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But it's, and, I have grandchildren. I have 4 grandchildren now, my son's kids, and I want to be a role model to them. I want them to do what they love. And the beautiful thing is, right now where we are in the world, you can do anything. There's nothing to hold you back at all. And I would say there's one of my mentors, one of my favorite mentors, Daniel Priestley, has a phrase which is be prolific, not perfect, which is, it means just do it. It doesn't, because I am a perfectionist, everything has to be perfect before it goes out. And I really have to force myself to just go with it. Go with what you've got, test it, and see what happens. And then you can improve it as you go along. It doesn't have to be spot on. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Blimey, isn't that great? Zareen sets the tone beautifully, reminding us that growth is imperfect, ongoing, and shaped by the choices made along the way. And that sense of staying with something, even when it's hard, runs through many of the conversations we had this year with our guests. Our next guest, Emily Gill, well, I mean, her story is incredible, and she brings that idea into sharp focus. Emily tells a story about an exam that she needed to pass to follow her career path. And boy, did she struggle with it.
And I think it's one thing that we don't often teach is that success happens when you keep trying and trying and trying and you keep getting knocked down. I think it's so easy to get knocked down and to give up, especially after the second or third time. But I mean, talking specifically about this instance, I probably sat these exams, they're called GMAT or GRE exams that you need to get in to do a master's in business. And I probably sat that exam 8 or 9 times and didn't get the result I knew I needed to get in. And this was, it took me over a year, which a lot of people, I remember my sister turning around to me and just saying, like, just forget about it, like, just give up. And there was something in me and I was just like, I'm not going to give up. And it became more of a challenge to actually just achieve what I wanted to. And I think if you can find something within you that, what is the real reason why you're doing something? And for me, it was, I need to find a way to like start again. And that motivated to me to just keep going.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Emily's determination in trying and sometimes failing to pass that exam just shines through in that moment until she eventually succeeded. I mean, once persistence becomes part of the journey, another reality quickly follows, learning how to handle rejection, uncertainty, and the challenging of putting your beliefs into words. Now, Emily gets 2 clips with good reason, and this one reflects on that next stage in her journey, basically how to deal with setbacks, which we all face.
One big thing I think is not taking anything personally. You hear a lot of no's and some yeses, but you hear a lot of no's when you're starting your own business. And again, I think it goes back to this idea of grit and resilience even, and just keeping going. Because sometimes if you'd have known how many times people would say no, you would think, I'm not going down that path. So one major learning is don't take anything too personally. It's not a decision made on who you are as an individual or your character. It's just that maybe it's not the right time, or maybe that this isn't the right investor, or this isn't the right customer. So that has been one big learning. Number two, I think I always consider, like, if not your business, like, then who? And I think this idea of creating something that is unique is really, really important, and knowing why you're unique, because you need to stand out, you need to be different from your competitors, and you need to be able to shout about that really loud. And again, something that still feels uncomfortable. And I think as British people, we're genuinely not very good about, well, certainly compared to the Americans, about shouting about our successes, or shouting about why our business is great, or shouting about, what makes us amazing. But I think in starting a business, you actually have to be very good at portraying this glittering picture of why your business is incredible, and not being so British and humble about things, because sometimes that gets brushed aside.
Thanks to both Zareen and Emily so far. Now on to our next guest. As confidence grows and ideas take shape, attention naturally turns outwards to things like partnerships, deals, and the people involved along the way in any entrepreneurial journey. And at that point, judgment becomes just as important as drive. And here, our next guest, Asim Ishaq, shares what he learned about trust, boundaries, and knowing when to walk away when running his business.
I think if you look at where I've made mistakes, I've trusted the wrong people, and I think if you can be better at trusting the right people and walking away from the wrong people quickly, you're going to save yourself a whole lot of heartache and pain. And I devised this methodology to trust people, and I teach that in some of the workshops that I've run. And basically, if somebody says to you that they can, check it. When I worked with this corporate, the guy that was my intermediary, it turned out he didn't have even the authority to buy a cup of coffee, but he made himself out to be a really huge, important person in the company. So when it kind of came crashing down, he was no use. His voice did not have resonance. And in some of the challenges that I've seen and been involved with, you really got to double check that the people that you're working with and the situations and the contracts actually protect you as much as the people that you're going to be working with. And the most powerful thing you can do is, if you feel that it's not appropriate, if your assessment is telling you it isn't right, that you should walk away, because you will save yourself a lot of wasted time that you will do something far more productive with instead.
Asim's experience there highlights how much progress depends on your judgment, not just in things like contracts and partnerships, but in who to trust and who to do things with more broadly. And it kind of links a bit to the brilliant Mindy Gibbons-Klein, our next guest. Mindy expands on the theme of judgment by exploring who and what is shaping your thinking, and the real power of having the right conversations with the right people.
Be aware of who you're listening to, who you're allowing and what you're allowing to influence you, which is hard because it's subconscious. Reflection, taking that time out, doing this deep thinking about what's most important, where you're going, where you want to go, and not listening to people who are detractors. So that's one thing I would say. And the other thing I said, I just used the word magic of conversations. It is about having the goals in mind, but not being too rigid, leaving them porous around the edges, allowing things in, being open, give people more of your time with your phone off, to listen to what they're saying and suggesting, and to kind of, collaboration does require that kind of committed listening.
Now, Mindy's reflections point to the importance of intention there, creating space to listen, reflect, and remain open. And when that mindset is in place, expectations also begin to shift. And this is why, while I love all my guests equally, of course, one of my favourites from this year, Jenny Garrett, OBE, brings perspective to what sustainable progress really looks like over time.
There's lots of things. I think one of them is it doesn't happen overnight. Like we currently track our clients. Often it takes sometimes a year from a first conversation to someone buying from us. Now, everyone will have a different journey, but I think often you have a month in your new business and you think, why have I got any clients? Or why isn't, haven't I sold X amount? I think you have to be prepared for the long game. And you have to think about that. Let me be realistic about how long it might take me to get the momentum that I need to be successful, and what might I have to do to keep myself going in that time. Because I think a lot of people stop too early, they give up too early, and actually they might be on the cusp of success. So I think about it as a long game.
Well, as you can hear, Jenny Garrett grounds her journey in patience and realism. And alongside that long-term view, there is a contrast to how we show up each day, and the practical work that underpins everything day to day is epitomised by the brilliant Richard Barkey, CEO of Imparter. And he talks here about the practical, essentially, turning attention to the fundamentals that keep a business alive and evolving.
So the first one is watch the cash. Cash is king, and you really have to, if you're starting a business, you have to know what's coming in and out every day, have a spreadsheet or a tool that monitors that for you. That's just a basic thing, but you won't last long if you're not on top of your cash flow. More fun and interesting than that, I think, is about not getting stuck in the lab. So don't try and design a product or come up with a solution in isolation. It's very easy to do that, especially now when you can build things and prototype them very quickly. And I certainly would aim for a rapid cycle of prototyping, testing with customers. You have to engage with the human beings you're trying to sell to understand if what you're doing is something they actually want and how to refine it. So don't lock yourself away and build a product. And this is probably, I think we spent too long in the early days building a product before really getting out there and seeing how it got used in the real world. So engage early and often with your real customers. I think that'd be my biggest thing.
So in that clip, Richard's brought the focus firmly back to reality: cash, customers, and constant feedback. And when those foundations are in place, a different kind of challenge emerges: leadership itself. Let's go over to the States now for our last clip, which links to that nicely. And it's about when the amazing Bobby Dutton captures a light bulb moment when the growth required meant that Bobby as a leader needed to step back rather than pushing himself forward.
I'll always remember asking my production manager, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago now. We were at the end of a show. It had been a very long day. It was going great. And I was exhausted. I had something else going on the next day, or maybe I wasn't feeling great. And I went up to him and I just said, hey, if I wasn't here, how would you feel? And his response surprised me. It was, I don't know what you're doing here in the first place. This is my job. It's just making it harder because everyone wants to ask you questions when you just have to give them to me because I'm the one that has to do it. He respectfully told me to get out of the way. And that's when I learned the biggest lesson of all as a leader is sometimes the best way to manage people is to make sure they have the support they need, but then get out of the way.
Well, thanks to Bobby for that final insight. I think listening back, a clear thread runs through all of these conversations from 2025. You got Zareen Ruhi Ahmed begins by giving permission to follow what matters, to stay curious, and to accept that mistakes are not detours, but just part of becoming who you are. Emily Gill brings that idea to life, showing what it really looks like to keep going, to face rejection without taking it personally, and to find the confidence to speak clearly about what makes a business worth following and backing. And as the focus shifts outward, Asim Ishaq reminds us that progress also depends on judgment, good judgment on trusting the right people, protecting time and energy, and having the courage to walk away when something just doesn't feel right. Mindy Gibbons-Klein builds on that by highlighting some of the quieter influences who is listened to, which voices are given weight, and how much can change when conversations are approached with openness and intent. She was followed by Jenny Garrett, OBE, who grounds all of this in realism, reframing success as something that unfolds over time rather than overnight. Richard Barkey then brings the journey back into the practical, staying close to cash flow, staying close to customers, and learning in the real world rather than in isolation. And finally, Bobby Dutton captures what happens and what matters when those foundations hold. The leadership shift that comes from trusting others to do their jobs well and knowing when the most powerful thing you can possibly do is to step to one side. Well, that's it for our 2025 end of year special. Thank you to all of our guests this year. They all added lots and lots of fantastic insight. And I must thank all of them for being willing to share their stories, experiences, advice, and such value to both me and the listeners over the last 12 months. I'll be trying my best to incorporate many of their lessons into my business, and I hope you will too. So I'm really looking forward to 2026, a new chapter of the Merri-Cast podcast, where we will continue to have fantastic entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders sharing their knowledge, wisdom, and unique stories. So a huge thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in this year. And thank you to Charlotte Walter, who helps put these podcasts together every time. She does a brilliant job every time as well. And we hope you'll rejoin us in the new year. But until then, I wish you all a great break and see you in 2026.